Today we're going to go over the 4 main cutting techniques with a bowl gouge. Hi, I'm Kent, and welcome to Turn a Wood Bowl. Today we're going to talk about the 4 main cutting techniques when using a bowl gouge. Now, a bowl gouge is probably the most versatile tool for turning wood bowls, hence the name bowl gouge. But did you know that there's 4 different cuts or techniques that you can use with this bowl gouge that will allow you to do pretty much anything you need while turning a bowl, from roughing out the exterior of a bowl blank to putting a final, really smooth finish on the surface of the bowl as well. So let's dig into this and let's look at the bowl gouge a little bit closer and talk about the 4 different cutting techniques. Okay, before we dig into this too far, let me explain to you that I'm using a swept back bowl gouge. This profile is a 55-degree bevel, front bevel, with a swept back wing profile. Now, there are many different ways that you can profile your bowl gouge. This happens to be the way that I prefer. There is no right or wrong way, but this particular bowl gouge profile will give you the ability to do these 4 cuts that we're going to cover very easily and very efficiently. You could do them with a fingernail grind and with other grinds, but these long wings are going to come into play, especially when we get into the last 2 techniques that I'm going to share with you. So this is a 55-degree bevel swept back bowl gouge. Some people also call this the Irish grind or the Ellsworth grind. Just keep in mind you can use any bowl gouge that you would like, but the smaller the wings are, the more difficult it's going to be to do the 3rd and 4th techniques that we're going to cover. Okay, so the first bowl gouge cutting technique is called the push cut. Now, the push cut is the workhorse of the bowl gouge cutting techniques. What is a push cut? Essentially, the nose or the front cutting edge of the bowl gouge is going to be pointing in the direction of the cut. So if I'm making a cut from left to right, that bowl gouge nose is going to be rotated and the flute's going to be rotated towards that cut. And I'll be moving with leading with the nose of the bowl gouge. Now, even if I rotate and make a cut the opposite direction from right to left, it's still a push cut when that nose is leading the cut, when it's moving along with that cut first. One of the huge advantages of the push cut is the fact that you have bevel support. Now, riding the bevel, which I have a video on if you want to check that out, is going to give you added support as you make your cut. What am I talking about? Well, if you think about the fence on a table saw, the bowl gouge bevel is similar. It's going to guide that cutting tip and prevent it from digging in too deeply and from popping out. So it acts as a support system for the cut to stabilize the cut and make it easier for you to make nice smooth curves on your bowl. So regardless of the direction of the cut, whether you're moving from right to left or left to right, if the nose of the tool is pointing forward in the direction of the cut, it is a push cut. And it also doesn't matter where your body position is. Sometimes when we're roughing, we'll actually stand in front of the bowl and make what looks like a pulling cut back towards our body, but we're actually leading with that nose, so it's truly a push cut. So our next bowl gouge cutting technique is a pull cut. It is just like a push cut, however, it is going backwards. Where the push cut had the nose or the tip of the bowl gouge pointing in the direction of the cut, the pull cut is the exact opposite. The bowl gouge is being pulled away from the nose in a backwards position. We still have bevel support, which is great because it's a bevel supported cut, so it's going to be a very secure, very safe cut. You want to make sure that you don't get over on the side wing and grab too much of that wing because it's easy to get a catch that way and flip the bowl gouge over. Instead, you want to be up near the tip just like you are with a push cut and make sure you have bevel support first and then introduce the cutting tip. So with that bevel support, you're going to be able to make a nice smooth cut. Now, when would you make this cut? Well, quite honestly, I don't use this cut very often. Actually, of all of the cuts and the percentages, I use the push cut the most, probably 80% of the time. And the pull cut, I would say probably less than 2% of the time. But there are times when you have a little indentation or maybe the base of the bowl and you can't quite get in there to start a push cut. Instead, you can make a pull cut and get that shape started with a nice bevel supported cut. And you're going and cutting with the grain support. Now, what is grain support? Well, if you're not familiar with grain support, please, when you get done watching this video, go check out my other video on which direction to cut. It's going to explain all about supported grain cut, and that's a huge advantage. Once you understand that thoroughly, you're going to have much smoother bowls. So you're going to want to check out that video. Hey, do me a favor. If you're liking this video so far, click that like button below the screen, would you please? Thank you so much. So essentially, the pull cut is going to be used in areas where you just need to get into a little tight spot and make a nice smooth cut. But in general, it's not used that much. The push cut, again, is the workhorse of these 4 cuts. For me personally, the push cut is what I use the absolute most. All right, our third cut, or our third technique, I should say, because this truly is not a cut, it's a scrape. And that's our third technique, is a scrape with a bowl gouge. Now, the way you scrape with a bowl gouge is you present the flute to the surface of the wood, and you're basically going to scrape with the lower wing of the bowl gouge only. You're holding the bowl gouge in almost a horizontal position. You're also going to want to rotate the tool rest so you have about a 90-degree support to the tools. It's a little different than the push and pull cut where you want that tool rest right up against your turning material. Instead, you want about a 90-degree support. You're going to put pressure down on top of the tool into the tool rest, and you're going to let that bottom wing just scrape away the surface. Now, when would you use the scraping cut? Well, the scraping cut, which I shouldn't call it cut because it's a scrape, but a scraping technique is used to remove material that is going to be more for shaping. For instance, you wouldn't use a scraping technique to rough out a bowl blank. For that, you would want to use a push cut. So this scrape cut is more for refining a shape. So let's say you have the bowl blank pretty much shaped. The exterior of the bowl is pretty much shaped. However, there's a couple bumps in that you want to get away. You want to remove that material very quickly. Well, a scraping cut is great for that. You want to make sure that your scraping cuts are grain supported because you're basically tearing out fibers here, and this is not going to leave a smooth surface. It's going to rough up the surface pretty good. So you want to keep that in mind as well. You don't want to be using this to shape the entire bowl because you're going to have a rough finish when you're done. Instead, just use it sparingly to help refine that shape to get it right where you want it and get the form of the bowl the way you want it. Now, the scraping cut can be used up near the rim a little bit and a little bit inside the rim of the bowl, but not down inside the interior of the bowl. This technique is only for the exterior of the bowl. The fourth technique is called a shear scrape. Now, like the scrape, we're using that lower wing. However, instead of being horizontal like we are with the scraping cut, we're dropping the handle to about 45 degrees and we're using the bottom wing. So the material that's coming around is essentially going right past that wing and making just a very delicate shave. And we're going to see this in just a minute with the shavings that come off of a shear scrape. They're much more refined and delicate compared to all of the other shavings. So what's happening is the shear scrape is used last on the exterior of the bowl, and it's designed to refine the surface of the bowl. It's going to take out any tool marks. It's going to refine any last little imperfections with the curve. You can easily smooth them out using the shear scrape. Now, a really cool thing about the shear scrape, because it's making such a light scrape or cut across the surface, it is grain support direction independent, meaning you can go left or right or left, and as long as you're making delicate light cuts with a shear scrape, you're not going to tear out ingrained fibers like you will with a scraping cut or with any of the other cuts that you really need to be using that grain supported direction. With this cut, you can actually go back and forth. So you can just kind of rock your body and go back and forth across an area and smooth out a surface. And I'll tell you what, when you get good at doing this, you can start sanding at 180 or even 240 because the surface of your bowl will be that smooth. Now, like the scraping cut, the shear scrape absolutely cannot be used on the inside of a bowl. Do not do this in the inside of the bowl. Because of the orientation of the bowl gouge being at a 45-degree angle and pointing up, you could potentially get a really nasty catch, break the bowl, or throw it off the lathe very easily. So do not use the shear scrape on the interior of the bowl, only the exterior. Now, if you want to shear scrape or delicately refine that surface of the interior of the bowl, try using a round nose scraper. I have a video all about round nose scrapers. Check that out. And the technique is somewhat similar to what we're doing with the shear scrape on the exterior, except the round nose scraper is designed for the interior of the bowl. This is pretty cool. You can see the shavings from each of the different cuts. So what we have here on the left is these are rough cuts, push cuts, and pull cuts used to clear away material quickly. Deep cuts, and they're making large shavings. These are also push and pull cuts, however they're smaller. They're made with a smaller bowl gouge, and they're designed for finishing or refining and making more smooth finish on the bowl. So they're not as big and deep. They're basically more delicate than the first shavings that are for roughing. Now, these are scraping cuts. It's technically not a cut, it's a scrape. So you can see that these are torn apart. They're actually just shaved right off the surface of the wood. And over here we have shear scrape. These are the angel hair, really thin, wispy shavings that come off when we're using the shear scrape. And the shear scrape is used to refine and really smooth that outside exterior of the bowl. So here you have the 4 different types of shavings that are created with the bowl gouge cuts. You've got the push and pull cut, you have the scraping cut shaving, and you have the shear scrape shavings. So there you have it, 4 different bowl gouge techniques to completely turn an entire bowl from start to finish. The only thing the bowl gouge can't do very well is get into really tight areas like the dovetail angle on the tenon. And that's where I use a detail spindle gouge just to get down there and make a nice angle and clean out that little area. Other than that, the bowl gouge can do an entire bowl all by itself. You don't need any other tools. As a matter of fact, you can do it with one bowl gouge. Now, I get this question often too, is like, well, then why do you have different sized bowl gouges? Well, bowl gouges come in different sizes for the different finished and cut size that they're going to make. The larger the bowl gouge, the more material it will remove quicker. You want to think of the larger bowl gouges for roughing and getting material away quickly, not really giving you a very refined surface. You could use them to make a refined surface, but they're a little more difficult to do that with. Instead, you use the larger bowl gouges to rough out material and take material away, and you use the smaller bowl gouges to make those nice finishing cuts and make those light passes that are going to give you a really nice refined surface. That would be your different reasons for sizes. But as far as the cuts, we have the push cut, the pull cut, the scraping cut, and the shear scraping cut. Those 4 techniques will let you do anything you want with a bowl gouge. Now, guess what? This is where there's a big line in the sand as far as the difference between a carbide scraper and a bowl gouge. And I have a video all about carbide scrapers and bowl gouges if you want to check that out. But essentially, the bowl gouge can do things that a carbide scraper can't do. You can't do a shear scrape on the exterior as efficiently with a carbide tool as you can with a bowl gouge. And you can't make really clean bevel supported push or pull cuts with a carbide scraper. Now, that being said, as you'll see in the other video, I don't have a problem with carbide scrapers, and they have their place. So go check out that video and you can learn more about that. And I get that question a lot. People ask about, well, carbide and the bowl gouge are the same. Why do you use the bowl gouge? Well, they're not the same. And this video hopefully illustrates the versatility of the bowl gouge and the fact that it has 4 very different styles of techniques that can be used just by simply rotating the tool and using it and holding it in a different direction. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, do me a huge favor. Click that like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribing. Click that bell and you'll be notified when I have a new video coming out. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope this helps you understand the versatility of the bull gouge. These techniques don't come overnight, so don't expect to just pick these up and learn how to do them instantly. You need to practice them. As a matter of fact, if you want to check out my wood bowl turning start to finish online e-course, I actually use the bull gouge throughout that course, and we are turning a small bull. When I say we're, that means you and I are both turning the same type of wood at the same time, and I'm going to give you exercises in that course that you can follow. And as we progress through that course, each lesson is going to give you different things and exercises to do with the bull gouge. When you're done with the course, you're going to be feeling pretty confident about all the techniques that we just illustrated here in this video. So go check that out. If you're new to wood turning, if you've been turning for a while and you're struggling a little bit with the bull gouge, if you're a carbide tool user and you're thinking about trying out the bull gouge, then definitely check out my online wood bowl turning start to finish e-course. You're going to love it. All right, guys, thank you so much. And as always, until next time, happy turning.